Hey, what's going on, everybody? Today is June 21st, 2024. I think it's the first day of summer officially on the Northern Hemisphere. So, welcome to the Daily AI Show. Today is what we call our wait. What did we just say about AI? And if you're looking at our screen there, you probably saw a shock face. In fact, I'll put it back up there really quick before we get into it. You know what this made me think of, guys? It was it was just a random AI generation of like what I said, make somebody look shocked. But doesn't it remind you of Spaceballs when she's like, "You just shot my hair"? Did anybody get those vibes?
That's a good one. That's a good
Yeah,
one.
totally. Totally, the reason I used it was because it reminded me of Spaceballs when the princess and she's like, "They just shot me here," and then she turns around and shoots everybody. Hey, today we got Junmi, Andy, Beth. I'm Brian. We'll see if anybody else pops in the door as we're going. But like I said, today is our opportunity to stop with new ideas, new shows, new comments, right? And to sort of look back at the last 2 weeks of shows. Because what we realized was, we're always moving forward. And sometimes a lot has happened after a show, or we've had more conversations in our Slack channel, or there's been new developments or new news stories, which happens all the time. And so this is just an opportunity for us every other Friday to just slow down for a second and go, okay, hold on a second. What did we just talk about? Both for us and for our audience. It's one of my favorite shows. Beth, I think props goes to you for this one. I think it was your idea initially. And now we've done, I don't know, 8 of them or something like that over maybe more than that at this point, because every other week. So that's what we got for today. And I mean, I'll kind of kick things off by just going all the way back to two Mondays ago, which was the Reuters report. We talked about, the Reuters report was specifically about how people are using 12,000 people, 2,000 per country, 6 countries are using AI to find out about news. That was sort of the point of the survey, and we talked about it on the show. But as we uncovered on the show, there was just a lot more in that report, that just really good numbers. So the reason I wanted to bring it up is because, as I was saying 2 days ago, I was over in Austin. Got to go hang out with a client of mine that has been a client for 3 years. But truthfully, initially we were working more on the LinkedIn strategy side. And just recently I've been talking to them about AI. Well, it all worlds aligned, everything lined up. They were having 50 to 60 of their employees all at their Austin location. And so they said, hey, why don't you come out and present on AI? So that's exactly what I did. And 3 or 4 of the slides that I had were specifically me going and looking at those individual data points in there. Because as we talk about all the time, there's just so many people, maybe outside of our audience. If you're listening to our show, clearly you have a vested interest probably in AI, or maybe just one particular topic piqued your interest, and that's how you found us, which is totally great as well. But, like we saw in the report, just lots of people aren't using ChatGPT, which is at the top as it is. I mean, Gemini and Claude and others are well below that when we looked at the stats. And so I was talking about that in that group. And then I got feedback after I was done. I did about just shy of a 2-hour presentation. And I took them all the way through, prompting techniques and chain of thought and all these kind of things to help them do better. They're in the education space. And so anyway, the feedback I got was very representative of actually that data. So it was fun to be in a room. I don't get to do this all the time. It's fun to be in a room where I had just presented, and there was a break after it. I literally had people coming up to me and saying, you really kind of opened my eyes. I didn't know it could do this. I didn't know it could do that. I'd only ever really tried it a while ago. Thanks for letting me know the free side of ChatGPT just got so much more powerful. I haven't turned it on in 6 weeks, and it was okay. So there's just a lot of those conversations like we always know. And I thought it was a great place to start this conversation today about people are using and trying generative AI and tools like ChatGPT, but often it's not even just that. It's when is the last time you tried it? Because it changes so rapidly. And obviously with the free side and then going from 3.5 to 4.0 makes a big difference, especially when it comes to written communication. Like if you're trying to put out better blogs or you're using it for the creative side of writing, 4.0 and even 4 and then definitely 3.5, there's a bit of a chasm there between those. And so if all you knew was the earlier model, certainly things have changed for you. And of course, being able to access custom GPTs, which was a huge revelation, I would say, for everybody in that group, the 60 people there. Even if they knew about custom GPTs, they didn't realize they now had access to it if they didn't have a paid account. So really, really cool to just sort of be in the room, talk to people who are on the ground using AI. And a lot of them said to me, I've been using it, but I didn't realize I was under using it. And that's a really cool conversation to have. So just wanted to sort of start with that one. I don't know if you guys have had any recent experiences like that.
Well, I wanted to touch on the Reuters report. It wasn't so long ago that we talked about that. And one of the points that I made about the Reuters survey, in effect, of all of these various countries and their general populations and their use of AI, was that their survey didn't include one of the most used AI services, which is character AI. And as a catch up on that, in the newsletters just today and yesterday, it's shown that character AI currently serves 20,000 queries per second. That's 1/5 of Google's search volume. That 20, just to put that into context, 1/5 of Google search volume. So this is a major point of access for people using AI. Why? Because they can create a character that will do almost anything, including, give them the latest news. So they create an avatar, in effect, that it's not animated or anything, but they just create a character and they give that character instructions on what to do as an AI assistant to deliver something to them. So I just wanted to throw that little fact out there with respect to the Reuters report.
And Andy, that's a fantastic segue into a story I didn't get to for the news, but I think is a great insight and is actually based off of the character AI side of things, or the AI avatar side of things. So there's a new social media platform called Butterflies. But what's different about this platform is when you log in and you create an account, you're actually creating an AI avatar to breathe and build and grow automatically within the platform. And so essentially this is another, the way I look at it is this is another way to see how all these stories and narratives unfold in this particular format. Right. So what happens is once you create the account, it creates the AI avatar, and then the system builds photos, builds interactions between the other avatars. So this isn't a social media platform for people; it's a social media platform for AI. So
it's an interesting concept, I guess. Right. So are we passive viewers? Is that the idea of it?
So kind of, right? So and again, I tie it to character AI because it's that same kind of experience where you're communicating with this AI avatar, whatever this embodiment of this character is, having conversations, like Andy said, finding out news or whatnot. But this is sort of like that next step of, experiencing a narrative. Now, this could be, you could simply wrap this up into another form of reality TV, but it's not reality. That that kind of concept. But I thought it was really interesting that the whole premise behind the platform was a social media platform for AI to communicate with each other. And yes, we're seeing it, how it unfolds. And that kind of connects me to this overall theme of cyberpunk. So if you're ever familiar with that genre, one of the books that had come out a while ago by William Gibson, who's a famous cyberpunk author, called Idoru, which is the entire story is about these AI avatars who become idols, right? And so we've seen examples of that in currently building up, like just like how we have new AI Instagram models and brand ambassadors, and we have AI created music performers and things like that. So this is all part of this larger concept of embodiment of an AI avatar, at least in the entertainment space. And so this leads to another story I wanted to follow up on in the cyberpunk genre, and that is self-assembling and disassembling swarm molecular robots via DNA molecular controller. I know that sounds like science fiction right off the bat, but essentially what that boils down to, nanobots. We got autonomous machines that we can program to do whatever we want, really, put it into our bodies to fix things, right? The whole approach behind this concept is you put some nanobots into your bloodstream, it goes ahead and fixes organ damage. It could potentially treat diseases like cancer, all of these things. And what makes this significant advancement is right now, all we can do is program, send it to go in, it does its thing, and then it goes away, right? But with the ability to self-assemble and disassemble, they can use whatever materials they have access to, like themselves, to build what they need to fix one thing, break themselves down, or reform themselves into something else. Very early, but if you think the future is in the future, no, future is now.
Absolutely. And it's early, but I'm seeing that format come from a bunch of different labs, right? So it's something that a bunch of people are working on. They have different structures, right? Some of them are little cubes that just like climb on over each other and like do some stuff. Some are much more elaborate. There's an endoscopy one that's a robot, a swallow robot. That can do your endoscopy, and the doctor can control it as it's moving through your system. Ultimately,
Yeah.
they hope AI can control it as it's moving through your system. But like this is clearly an edge that we're seeing, just like agents, right?
Right. So that one you're referring to, Beth, is from a company called the endoscopy one that you can put inside you right now, is from a company called Endiatex. So and its tech is called Pillbot, and they have a diagram on it on one of the things, and it's got a little propeller, and it's got a front that's got the camera in it, and it's very small, so it's literally the size of a pill. And then the current physician can guide it through your system, and is providing high resolution photography and real time imagery back to a screen. It's just amazing that that's actually here. And then eventually they are going to make that autonomous, so you can swallow it once, and then it will figure out how not to get out of your system as your body tries to remove it.
Right. And I think anybody who is listening to this who has had to swallow the scope for an endoscopy procedure is like, yes, give me the tiny pill. That's such a better option.
Yeah, for sure. Want to make sure we welcome Carl. Carl has joined us while we were having some of those conversations as well. So, Carl, we were just sort of we started by talking about the Reuters report and just talking about Andy was talking about character AI as well. That was left out of that report, and he was talking about the use case. And I don't know, do you have any comments? This is more on the news side of things because we didn't necessarily talk about it on Wednesday, I don't think. But just recently in the last 2 days, I've seen news about what TikTok is doing with their new AI features, which is having an avatar talk for you, or like it's sort of creating content, which is sort of in that character. And then also more direct to that, I would say, is like Hume AI. And I just saw Tyler, our buddy Tyler, post on LinkedIn, and he was talking about how they just had a huge update. Now, the last time I used Hume AI, which is more of a chat bot back and forth with almost like character AI, I would say, although I didn't create it, right? It's going and having a conversation. The whole point of it was that it was supposed to be a very natural flowing conversation. And I wasn't that impressed with it, but I guess they've done some updates to it too. So I don't know, Andy, I'm just, as you were talking about that, I was thinking about those two news stories and saying, yeah, you know, you're right to bring that up. And I know I had pushed back against that a little bit. And then I'm like, no, Andy's on top of this, because this is the same stuff they're talking about in the report, but they didn't bring it in, which is interesting that it wouldn't be part of it. So I don't know, Carl, do you have any thoughts on that or any of the other news stories from, or the shows rather, from the last 2 weeks?
Well, no, I just want to preview one of our guest interviews for the Daily AI show, where we were actually talking about avatars yesterday. So we interviewed Marcus Sheridan, and you'll see that coming up in the next couple of weeks here. And we'll actually ship, not, you know, announce and not say anything, but hey, it's all on you, Jimmy. But I think when we talked about, we did talk about avatars, and we talked about how, sure, you know, you'll have to ensure that people know that it's your avatar and whatnot, but we did talk about, like, hey, what will these things be, the impact they have on how people interact online? Like, you could have the CEO avatar on websites, and it actually answers all of your questions, all your frequently asked questions about the product, the pricing, all that stuff, answers for you, and you'll know that it's an avatar. But it kind of takes it ensures that it's not like we're trying to trick you, but it's more of like, we want to build a little bit more human element into, and maybe a little bit of personalization too, depends on how you build it, into a place where we normally can't, when we're doing our research, we just like, there needs to be a little bit more human connection. And even though people put videos on there, it's not really that connection. But once you actually start engaging or talking to an avatar in real time that can answer a lot of your questions, that changes things a little bit and changes a lot of different elements. So I'm curious to see, especially when you have an emotional aspect to it, when it can recognize or see, if you, hey, can you turn on your camera? Sure. Turn on camera, can recognize your facial expressions. I see that you're not impressed with what our product offering. Can you let me know what what's the issue? Or, yeah, I see you're a little ticked off with what's going on. So I thought that was kind of a neat way, a neat thing that we could be seeing.
We were just talking about this I have family in town, and we were just sitting around in my in-laws' house last night, having a similar conversation, but it was about like chatbots, meaning like when you're on the phone trees and you're trying to get through and you're like, representative, human. I want to talk to a human. I want to say, and it's like, you just keep going through it or whatever. To which, by the way, can I just tell you how awesome my wife is? My wife said, this is a throwback of throwbacks. My wife just looks at me across the room and goes, garlic bread, like that, which was a throwback to Ethan Mollick's post that I'm still laughing about, which totally threw me off. And she's like, that was just for you. I was like, man, you're the best, babe. But anyway, side note on that conversation. But we were talking about that and how my mother-in-law was making fun of my father-in-law and saying like, oh, he like goes from 0 to 60 in like 3 seconds, which he does. It's funny. But he's like, just put somebody on the, and he's like Homer Simpson. He's gone, and we were talking about just that, what you were saying, Carl, which is like, there needs to be more acknowledgement in these chatbots, and we're getting there for sure, where the avatar is definitely listening to the elevation of voice or tone or volume and realizing that clearly whatever the answers it's giving you are no longer appropriate, and it needs to route you the right way or find something else that can help you, because that's obviously one of the biggest things. And I don't know, I don't think people are going to have a problem with these newer avatar chatbots as long as it's solving their problem. Like, I don't think anybody's going to be against it. I totally talk to an AI if I got off the phone and been like, easiest conversation I've ever had, could care less whether I talk to a human or not. It's just that they're just so comically bad right now that, I think that's maybe what you're saying, Carl, is like that next level of fix is really going to make a big difference. Or to your point, the next level is like, turn on your camera, and which is an interesting thing. Like, oh, talk to the camera about it and have it read your facial expressions and stuff. Be interesting.
Carly,
Yeah.
also yesterday, Marcus mentioned the seller-free sales process until the customer wants to interact, right? And that was a path that he's really seeing moving forward too. So the
That's awesome.
idea of, just to be clear, the idea of this avatar that's going to answer your questions is not going to force you to ask questions before you want to ask questions, before you have questions to ask, because that's not the seller experience. That's not the sales experience you want, right? It's more just in time. Carl.
Well, we were talking about the, as all these things, Bland, I can't remember the other one. And even when people start really building out on Astra GPT 4.0 on whatever Claude is coming out with next, because that's the next, thing that everyone's excited about, you'll have that capability. Because even now with Blend, you don't even need to tell it. You just need to give it a goal, and then it'll try to achieve that goal in that conversation. So what would that mean when, again, you have a conversation with this? Could we say that it is moving towards a business agent? Like, you could say this avatar is, going that agent route, because it can see, it can hear, you can if the business allows it, you can upload your stuff. It can analyze, it can look at it. If you turn on your camera, it can see you, it can hear you. It's connected to a database, whatever that is. It has memory, right? And all it needs is to be able to activate to do things. That's all. I think that's the last piece. Hey, could you get me this thing? Like, let's say you're on a site. Hey, I want to see here's the dimensions. We'll talk about pools. Here's the blueprint for my house. Can you show me where exactly I should be putting my pool? Let me analyze that. In the back, this is blah, blah, blah. This is where you should do it. Oh, could you give me an updated blueprint with that? Sure, no problems. Here you go. Cool. Great. Can I book a demo? Sure. Let me take your information or write your information. Let me get you that. What time would you like? There's the options. You can say it or it's there. And think about that whole interaction. That is not the way we interact with websites right now. So that entire process now is available on a mobile device if you have the files, right? Because it becomes easier. So I don't even know what the ramifications of something like that available to everyone. Like, what does that mean? I'm not even sure. How will that change our interaction completely? And what if the interaction isn't with us? It's with our agent going out and doing these things. That doesn't even need an avatar. It's just like agent just happens somewhere, and then you just get all this back. I don't know.
So I'm going to call back to a previous show that we did about this and a comment that I made then, because I still think it's relevant. I think it's important for people to understand when they are giving people experiences, digital experiences that they've had with them, conversations that they've had with your likeness that you have not had, because they have a memory of you having a conversation with them that you don't have because you weren't in it. It's an avatar. And I kind of think like a digital not me avatar is the better move, because you don't expect me to remember what Sheila talked to you about, although I have access to those files. It's not the same kind of thing, I think.
It's a good, man. I like that. I like what both of you are saying. I hadn't really thought about this idea, but it totally makes sense. Like we were saying with the pool analogy, if my wife and I start the early process of we want a pool in our backyard. By the way, my backyard would definitely not fit a pool. But if we could, I had $60K to spend or more, and we're going to put a pool here in Florida. That's a, like to your point, Beth, that's a long process. It's a long tail process. There's so many variables, from maybe the loan that I might need to get if I'm not going to pay for it in cash, whatever, right? All the things that go involved in that, because the mortgage gets involved in whatever. If I had if my wife and I could set up an avatar that says, here are the parameters, go out, connect with all the other agents, figure it out, get me the best quotes, get the answers, and then let's reconvene in 2 days at 7 p.m. and my wife and I have time to sit down and talk about it and discuss. And then we sit down at the computer. Maybe it's even video because it has all the back information and it says, okay, hey, I'm your friendly Sheila, blah, blah, blah. I've gone out and I've done this research for you on pools in your area in Florida. You want to put a cage around it, blah, 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 blah. Here are all the things. Let's have a discussion about it. And then my wife and I go, okay, well, one of the things we're definitely most concerned about is such and such, the cost and price. And now Amanda and I, my wife and I, are now just having this natural conversation on camera that maybe has some of the other features you're talking about, Carl. That's we haven't touched or talked to any company. The company is probably using their agents to answer our calls based on their frequently asked questions and their knowledge docs and stuff. So it's this really cool idea of kind of what we were talking about yesterday with Leopold's paper, situational awareness, of this idea of multiple agents doing work on your behalf and coming back and then you having a human-like conversation with this avatar, this character, whatever, to get caught up. It's a cool future if you think about it. It's a really, really cool way to do it. Good for business, good for us.
I think so. I think about that is amazing when we think about that. But one thing that let's look at it in phases too, because obviously it's not going to get there like that because you need the businesses to actually do this. But it's interesting that we have this tech kind of available to us. Whenever they get it, whenever we get the API, you have that conversation already. Okay, got it. We got that conversation. Perfect. Now we need to build on top of that. So what are the steps that, like, as businesses you need to build? And what are the things that we humans, because I think like that kind of stuff, in addition to all the stuff that Apple came out with, once people start understanding, oh, you just did that, and it's not really mentally draining. It's like, oh yeah, I just told this thing that I'm paying $20 a month for to go out and do this. You only pay $20 a month for that? It's like, what is it? ChatGPT. Really? That's what it does? Like,
right.
I think that personal down word of mouth, hey, I can do all this really cool stuff with it. To me, that's where real adoption happens, because it's actually doing stuff for you. Like, you don't have to, it's no longer a chatbot. It's more of like, hey, I just need you to do this. Holy cow. Like, and then 2 days later, all this stuff comes back. And now you're having this conversation with this entity that has done everything for you that you're looking for. I'm just hoping that you know, and I know that marketers, advertisers ruin everything. So what possible places will marketers and advertisers ruin in that entire process?
Well, it's the goal, right? It's if you give the goal to meet the client's needs, that's a different thing than if you give the goal to insist that this conversation ends with a sale, right? That customer journey from the AI, the very enthusiastic AI that just wants to help you out and reach its goal, those would lead to two very different things.
Because there's no more Google. If say Brian, everything that you just described, there's no more display because you're not looking anything. There's no more display advertising. There's no more Google advertising. There's no more paid social because you're not looking at anything. Maybe you add it into the agent instructions. I thought I saw it. Check it out.
In that scenario, Amanda and I would have, in that scenario, I mean, that's one of billions of scenarios in sales, right? But in that scenario, yeah, I probably looked at ads because maybe I looked at it and said, oh, I want that. Let me find a pool reference. I want that zero entry, right? I want to be able to just tickle my finger in my toes into the water or whatever. And so Amanda and I would have seen ads for that or whatever. And you're right. And I don't know, in that scenario, maybe we're referencing those types of things and saying, we saw this and we liked it. We saw that and we liked it, blah, blah, blah. And that might still come in the form of ads, because ultimately I might be referencing and saying that such and such a company does this, and I really like the way they do their tile. bring that into the conversation. That's important to us. So I'm not really sure. I mean, look, the whole thing is a really cool thought experiment. You brought back to Apple. So I just want to bring that into the conversation, because we talked about Apple. Is Apple really intelligence for everybody? Is Apple intelligence for everybody? Sorry, I'm trying to figure out how we said that. And my point to that when we titled that was, well, it's only going to roll out to anybody with M1 chips going forward, which is going back a few years. Jimmy, you clarified that. But as far as going on your phones, really just the 15 Pro, and then whatever comes out in the fall, which will probably just be 16. So you're 16 base model. And so that severely limits who gets Apple intelligence. Andy, you talked about being just on the outside cusp. My daughter's iPad on the outside of that. It's too old. It doesn't have the M1, whatever. So the reason I bring that up, though, Carl, is like, we talk about this a lot. I'm seeing this in the EV, industry as an analogy, which is, I think we missed the mark with the EV industry. A guy who owns 2 EVs. I don't have a gas car anymore, but that was that we didn't have this transition period of plug-in hybrids, which I had owned one of those and realized the real value of that, which was that I could at any point go 30 miles on a battery, but I also had a gas car. It was the perfect scenario. I could drive to Georgia, no problem, but I also went around on battery all the time. And so, wow, we really missed it, because the adoption would have been better to the charging network and things like that, and people wouldn't have had the range anxiety. Now here we are with AI. And so the analogy there is, do you think what's going to come out with Siri, what we assume will come out with Siri, what they've shown us with Apple Intelligence stuff, is this the next step needed to train people to use these avatar-like scenarios so that they're ready for the future we just talked about, that hypothetical future? Do we need Apple Intelligence and Siri to get there?
We need certainly something like it. Going back to that report, right? It's 7% in the US use ChatGPT daily, right? So that we all commented that that's a tiny percentage. That speaks to awareness. Right, the Apple method, their system of these small steps, dipping your toe, getting you used to it's the same playbook of teaching people how to use a smartphone. It's getting your customer ready for the larger things, and so Apple's really good at that. And so yes, I think we need the Apple and Apple Intelligence series approach to just get more awareness and use, and getting people used to the idea of how their data will interact, how AI will work for them, to build up to that point where the expectation and the hype actually, meet, where the delivery and the hype actually meet. And so you need that step before you can say, oh, and then you'll wake up in the morning and you'll say, hello, AI avatar name here, and do all of the things for me today. Awesome. Along those kinds of lines.
Yeah. I know we wanted to bring up, you might be saying this, Beth, you're talking about the comment.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Go for it.
I just wanted to make a note. So we've had some lively conversations on episode 224. Can frontier AI models keep growing at 5x per year? And I'm going to ask the panel something that Justin asked, but I also want to flag for people, like, if you're not checking out our comments and interacting back and forth, like, we're amazing, and you all know we're amazing, but our viewers are equally as amazing, if not more. So please go check those out as well. That's on YouTube. So this came from Justin. He says, I appreciate your discussion on the industry's pace of change. As you noted, enterprise long-term plans based on today's static models may fall behind, and balancing current use with future capabilities is challenging. He mentioned the JEPA architecture. It's not the ultimate solution, but it's a good option. And then he asks, can edge devices with reduced latency lead to multimodal, multi-agent systems and impact applications in autonomous systems or Internet of Things, IoT? First, JEPA. Can someone recap JEPA? Andy, was that you?
Yeah, it was, but I'd have to go review that one in order to make sense of it very easily.
I mean,
Okay.
Jeff is joint
But-
embedding predictive architecture. So, and it's for both images and video, and it really has to do with latency. So it's a tool, right? It's another way of looking at improving latency for both image and video. So, I mean, the way I read it with Justin was, he's like, it's a solid move, not the ultimate solution. And I would agree with that, which is that we've done shows on this, right? About how language models, as they are, LLMs, are more than likely not the primary or only solution. And we've talked about shows where people have said LLMs will absolutely not get us to AGI. So I think that's kind of what I read from what Justin was saying, and I agree with that. Sorry,
And
Andy,
I would say that JEPA and architectural changes, including going to CAN, Kolmogorov-Arnold networks as an architecture, is one of these major shifts away from LLMs. And what Justin's saying is, are tuning and improving LLMs going to be not enough to keep us on this incredible pace of 5x? And he's right. There's going to be this host of different changes that solve problems that are limiting in the development of artificial and general intelligence. And there will be architectural changes. There will also be methodological, algorithmic changes. This was something that was discussed, I think, yesterday's show, with Leopold, who's really kind of articulated what all of these progressive changes are about. And I wanted to bring into this, one of the things that's been a limiter is the quality and quantity of training data. And so I have two important points about that. One is that NVIDIA just released a system called Nemotron 340B that is designed to generate quality training data by the AI. So it's synthetic data, but their system is designed to create quality replication of what otherwise would be human generated data. And so there's an initiative and a research arm that way. But now let's go back to what we've been discussing today. Butterflies is an example of creating an AI that's going to interact in a real social environment alongside humans. So in Butterflies, you create an AI avatar that is equal to you in its status in the social network. But that's just the starting point. So you can talk as a profile, and so can your avatar. That's the ante of getting into Butterflies is you've got to create an avatar, but you're also there yourself. And now humans are interacting with AIs in this social context, and that's allowing the creation of an environment in which AI autonomous behaviors can be evaluated by real human interactors, to coin a term, so that you can refine their behavior and you can identify those avatars that behave in ways that are really like simulated humans and not, should not be kind of, chastised in the context of the social world because they're behaving in empathetic ways, helpful ways. And so we have a training environment that is going to assist in the development of AIs that can move forward that way. And that's really what the avatar world that we've been discussing today has to achieve, is we've got to get to the point where the AI avatar that you're depending on as an assistant is capable of doing everything that a real live human could do, and is satisfying in its emotional intelligence and its sort of actual intelligence in executing on the plans and desires and goals that you have. So all of these things, they all have a contribution to this advancement of the capabilities of AI that I think will keep us at or beyond the 5x that we talked about in the frontier model growth, because we're going to leave the world of large language models, and there'll be these environments where there are avatars, and there will be other tools and methods that are going to advance the capabilities of the language models themselves.
Absolutely. And part of what that so Zoom, right? The Zoom CEO recently came out, and we covered it, I think, in one of our news stories, talking about digital twins. Your digital twin will now attend a Zoom meeting for you, and to go back to Leopold's talking about China and a previous episode of China. Talking about sorry, I don't remember what that title was, but that also had a ton of engagement. Are we really in a place where we are ahead simply because we're doing what we're doing? Is there not a parallel process happening in other labs, like Chinese labs, that get to this digital avatar place, that get to a place where that kind of duplication, right, digitization of the essence of you is also possible there? Do we think it's only happening here?
I just wanted to throw in really quick before we wrap in. That episode's called Don't Sleep on China. The AI race is on, and that's episode 197. It came out on May 14th. So if you want to go check that out on YouTube or any of the other platforms, you can find that. But we did definitely talk about China quite a bit yesterday because Leopold talks about a lot in situational awareness. I think we'll leave it there. The second half, I know Justin was talking about the edge computing. All I would say to Justin's comment on that is, he says, can edge devices with reduced latency lead to multimodal, multi-agent systems and impact applications in autonomous systems or IoT? My answer to that is yes. Why not? We talked about the Raspberry Pis. We talked about how, even with Apple and Siri and on device, before it goes to cloud, how much can it control or handle on device? As that gets better and better, as the algorithm efficiencies get better, as the compute gets better, and as the latency drops, yeah, sure. Why wouldn't edge computing and devices be able to do truly amazing things that we can now only do on a powerful laptop? So I agree. I think, yeah, sure, Justin. I'm totally on top of that. Thank you for the comments and the questions and stuff. Next week, we're going to have a whole bunch of different topics. Man, a lot has come out in just the last couple of days. Just today, I was sharing with the team about Ethan Malick's and his wife's and several other people. I don't want to say it's just him, but there was a paper put out where he actually releases both the architecture and the prompts he used to create their latest chatbot that's supposed to help entrepreneurs pitch. So very, very interesting. Literally came out this morning, so couldn't even talk about it more if I wanted to, but it sounds like a great topic for one of our shows next week. We'll definitely dive into that. We'll have a tool review as we do every other Friday, and a whole bunch of other great topics. So make sure you guys keep coming back. Go to dailyaishow.com if you would like to see any of our previous episodes, like we mentioned, as well as sign up for our newsletter. This Sunday, we'll drop issue number 3. It's a great place to get a whole bunch of additional information that doesn't make it to the live shows all the time, because we would be here for hours. So if you want to get even more, if you want to hear more about what we're talking about, go sign up for the newsletter. It's free, of course. And it's there for us to just share with you in other ways. So that's it. Thanks, everybody. And we will see you guys on Monday. I think, Jimmy, is this episode 230? Did we just finish 230? 230 in the books. Rocking and rolling. All right, guys. We'll see you on Monday. Have a great weekend.
Aloha.